Imagine sitting in your home and constantly hearing gunfire and explosions all around you. Think of rushing your children off to school, wondering if you will ever see them again. If you were a citizen in Afghanistan, this would be your everyday life. Today, I'm going to speak to you about the war in Afghanistan and why it has been a success. To understand why and how the war in Afghanistan has been a success, we have to look at the start and cause of the war, the relationships that have been created through the war, and finally the results of the war. To understand why this war is worth fighting, we must first establish why we are there in the first place. The war in Afghanistan began in October of 2001 in response to the September 11th terrorist attacks against the United States. Many believed that the only objective of the war was to find and kill one of al-Qaeda's leaders, Osama bin Laden. On September 20th, 2001, President George W. Bush addressed Congress regarding the war on terrorism, which was his response to 9/11 and the reason for the beginning of the war in Afghanistan. He informed Congress that our war on terror begins with al-Qaeda, but it does not end there. It will not end until every terrorist group of global reach has been found, stopped, and defeated. The current objective of the war, according to NATO, is to enable the Afghan authorities to provide effective security across the country and to ensure that Afghanistan is never again a safe haven for terrorists. Now that we've seen the cause of the war and its purpose, let's look at some of the benefits, starting with the relationships that are created through the war. The war in Afghanistan is conducted by the U.S. military as well as several NATO and non-NATO countries. Afghanistan is split into regional commands, and each of these regional commands is controlled by a different country. ISAF's regional command structure lists the United States, Italy, Germany, France, and the Netherlands as the different regional commanding countries. These countries being command allows for training and life experiences between several different countries to be gained in these different regions across Afghanistan. The United States military and NATO also gain experience by their training of the Afghan military and police forces. This training not only reinforces NATO's mission, but it also allows the opportunity for Afghan civilians to protect their own country with the looming withdrawal of U.S. and NATO troops. The personal and professional relationships formed during these operations are beneficial not only to the individuals, but also to their respective home country. The friendships and bonds between these countries is evident, and the bonds of the troops and relationships created are very beneficial. The relationships formed allow for stronger allies to be made, but a deciding factor for many is the evident results of the war. According to World News and ISAF reports, more than 3,300 insurgents have been killed and nearly 3,500 insurgents captured in 2012 alone. On May 2, 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan as a result of timely and accurate military intelligence and execution. Much of the information that led to bin Laden's death was collected as a direct or indirect result of the operations currently going on in Afghanistan. Many terrorist operations and their restraints of Afghan freedoms have been ended or greatly weakened due to the training and influence of the Afghan, U.S., and other countries' influences. Establishing Afghan forces and allowing freedom of the Afghan people has come a long way since 2001 and would not have been possible without the constant impact of U.S. and NATO forces. These forces and their training have trained Afghan forces in turn and paved their way to success. With the recent meeting of Afghan President Hamid Karzai and U.S. President Barack Obama in the United States, the number of troops that will remain in Afghanistan at the end of 2014 has yet to be decided. Many NATO countries already have plans in place to withdraw all troops by that deadline. But regardless of the remaining numbers after the end of 2014, the progress and the results that have been made are evident. The desire expressed from President Karzai during the meeting to keep U.S. and ally forces in Afghanistan after 2014 goes to show that our operations have greatly lightened corruption and helped Afghanistan free itself from the grasp of terrorism. They now have the ability and resources to decide their own fate. After looking at the cause, relationships, and results of the war in Afghanistan, it is important to take away that the war has very much been worth the results. Without our influence, the Afghan people would have been imprisoned by insurgent groups and unable to live freely. Their government would be controlled by corruption and influenced by insurgents, and the standard of living and daily lives of the Afghan people would be very different from what it is today. Without our operations in Afghanistan, we might have never found Osama bin Laden or stopped many of the insurgent leaders and their operations in the Middle East. The war in Afghanistan has and will continue to be costly, but in the end, you simply can't put a price tag on freedom.